Well, folks, thanks so much for tuning in to get today at the start of the week. Wow, have we got some news for you covering all kinds of items at home and in the US and abroad. So stay tuned. You're going to get to hear things behind the headlines that you're not going to get to hear in mainstream culturally Marxist media. Let's go straight to the Iran briefing, daily briefing, Iran and you. As I predicted last week, the price of oil has not rocketed. It's gone up, but it has not surged as many people feared, up to over $150 to $200 a barrel. Brent crude coming in at about $101, $102 per barrel today. So it's creeping up, but not shooting through the roof as we thought. Interesting, as Donald Trump is looking for support from other countries to keep open the Straits of Hormuz, now that Iran has shown they are going to continue to terrorize ships going through there. They're using smaller drones and smaller missiles because all of their larger ones have been knocked out. And Trump has delayed his trip to China because, and sending a gentle signal that he's kind of waiting to hear if they're going to help protect and help to support the Strait of Hormuz. France is already on side for that. The UK, Pakistan, and India have said yes, they'll help out. They'll provide support there. Canada, so far, just saying they are going to send troops to Greenland. So we continue to wonder about where Canada is on that one. The new Ayatollah, as you know, the son of the Ayatollah, son of Frankenstein, as some of them are calling him, is officially now, it has been declared, he is on life support. He's lost at least one leg, most of his face. When he was appointed, there was President Trump and others said he's probably not going to live too long. And that seems to be the case. Prayers for his family. So waking up is going on, and there needs to be a wake-up call here that Iran is, and like Hamas, Iran has said they want to kill, this is the regime, the particular brand of radical Islam. They want to kill all Jews all the time, everywhere. They want to vaporize Israel. They want to vaporize the United States, and they want to vaporize Christians. The Iranian regime, the Ayatollahs, have always said this, but just like in the run-up to the Second World War, we in the Western world, we get in denial. We think we're such nice people, nobody would want to kill us, who would want to hurt us? But it continues to happen. And so there is quite rightly the need to, in fact, be very much aware of this. Now, it's not only that why is it that Western media, Canada, the US, and even in Europe, is so reluctant to actually report this? And when these terrorist attacks happen in Canada or in the US, the mainstream media doesn't even like to mention the word Islamist. They don't even like to reflect on that at all. There was, as you know, an awful attack that took place in the synagogue recently in the U.S., where a guy drove a truck filled with explosives into a synagogue and into right at the daycare center was in that synagogue. And even the New York Times, in describing the person, called him born in Lebanon, U.S. citizen. Well, he recently was able to get his U.S. citizenship after being in the U.S. a number of years. And they said he did this because they quoted his statement, some of his family members were killed in an Israeli attack on Lebanon. And so automatically there's this notion that we should have some sympathy for him. What they didn't say was the attack by the Israelis was on Hezbollah encampments in Lebanon, that's on the border of Israel, where they fire rockets constantly into cities in Israel, killing innocent Israelis. And the so-called family members, both of the brothers were terrorist members of Hezbollah who were out there killing Jews, firing on them from the Lebanese border. It's amazing how media won't report this. The New York City incident last week where two people threw bombs at the official mansion of the mayor of New York, and they said it was in conjunction with some extreme right protests that was going on. Well, there was a protest going on by some kind of right-wing group, but the people who threw the bombs were Islamist terrorists, and they didn't say that. These people who threw the bombs were saying, basically protesting, saying the mayor of New York was not Islamist enough, and they were bombing the New York Islamist mayor. Media basically failed to do that. We have to call this what it is. The only way we are going to say, and many of us for years said, you can't let people into the country if they have these extreme Islamist beliefs. You can't let them in. You can't give them citizenship. And we have to all be saying with an increased voice to the imams across the U.S., across Canada, matter of fact, across the world, are all imams terrorists? No. Are all Muslims terrorists? No. 90% of them are not. But in a world of 2 billion Muslim people, that means there are actually quite a few who are, about 100 million, who would be sympathetic to these terrorist causes. The only thing that will slow that down is if imams across the world rise up and say it is wrong to do this kind of terrorism and kill innocent people. But the imams are not saying that so far. Well, the CBC had a headline that made it sound like, if you just looked at the headline, the Canadian economy is really doing well. They said the annual inflation rate has dropped 1.8% to 1.8%. When you read the full story and look behind it, what that means is the rate of increase of inflation is not rapidly rising as much as it was. So the rate is not rising, but the GDP, our GDP, especially in the fourth quarter, which is a measure of economic activity, dropped considerably. It's the slowest growth. This last year is the slowest GDP growth in 10 years. And that is not the headline that the taxpayer-funded outlets like the CBC report on. We continue to be lower than almost all states, including Alabama. GDP in Canada lower than even the Alabama GDP. A Canadian economist has just, from the BMO, has just contradicted or just said there was a contraction, as a matter of fact, in the last quarter, and it is unexpected. Economy not going well, and that's how it should be reported. Pierre Poilievre with a major announcement yesterday about his plan to revive the automobile sector, and basically saying yes, we're opposed to U.S. tariffs, yes, we're going to fight them aggressively, but this business of just withdrawing and running after other countries like China is not the way to go. His plan is to go head-to-head with the U.S., to have the trade negotiations, do it on a one car for one basis. Every car that we are allowed in to send into the U.S. tariff-free, will let one come in from the U.S. Let's have balanced trade. He's also saying, let's knock the GST off of Canadian-made cars. So some positive approaches there to try and revive trade. Still in Canada, one of Canada's well-known competitive shooters, this is a sports shooter, Lisa Mahoney, has said that Canada's new ridiculous gun laws, where they're trying to force firearms from sports shooters and farmers, while we leave alone the shooters in Toronto and Surrey and Vancouver. There's about 5.5 thousand sport shooters, and she said the new rules are definitely going to have a negative effect, going to cramp down sport shooting, even to those who would be wanting to participate in Olympic events. So hopefully the government will smarten up on some of that and start going after the bad guys instead of the good guys and the good girls. Premier Ford has announced something, and I appreciate his honesty on this. He says they are dropping the funding for the so-called supervised free consumption sites. That's where you can go and shoot up illegal drugs, be supervised, be helped, even be given the equipment to it. So kudos to Premier Ford for realizing this has been a disaster and being willing to say it. Premier Eby in BC has also said these free consumption sites are not working. Fairly obvious, as the increase in thousands and thousands of young Canadians dropping dead on our streets and sidewalks every year. These free consumption sites, free drugs, are not the way to go. When I raised this as a concern, when the Harper government raised this as a concern, almost 20 years ago when these sites were opening. We were scorned, we were laughed at, we were called unloving, we were called uncaring. And now, after tens of thousands of deaths of young people, finally governments are saying it's been a wrong policy. Are we hearing anything from media about any apologies from them for going after and just pounding those of us who are raising this as a concern? No, not so much. Anyway, the Epstein files continue to be the gift that keeps on giving to media. Some of you may know the name of Peggy Siegel. She is one of the top Hollywood celebrity, what you would call promoters, kind of works as a consultant, as an agent to some of the top Hollywood types, definitely Harvey Weinstein, also people like Steven Spielberg and others. And here now it's become known, her emails back and forth to Jeffrey Epstein, over 5,000 emails, all to do with gaining him access to key events, to A-list dinners, to the Met Opera. And then he gave her, for a birthday gift, he said 1 year, $100,000, so that she could use that money herself to donate to, well, for instance, one case to one of Elton John's causes. I'm not implicating Elton John here. I'm just saying people were paying huge amounts of money back and forth with Jeffrey Epstein to keep themselves known. And of course, her clients are now abandoning her in droves. Not surprised. Talk about academies and talk about celebrities. Look, I was pretty well accurate, not trying to wave my flag here, but on my predictions about who is going to do well at the academies. Now, look, I'm no celebrity expert, but I was just going on looking at the films and looking at what people were saying. And as we predicted, yes, for sure, one battle after another, right up there. And we see, as we predicted, Michael B. Jordan, that's not Michael Jordan, the basketball player, doing very well, a great role, was well recognized. Jessie Buckley, everybody was kind of saying that she would win for her role in Hamlet, and I predicted that also after listening to everybody else, and she did win. Amy Madigan took the Best Supporting Actress in Weapons, and Sean Penn in, as we kind of predicted, Best Supporting Actor, in the one battle after another. Sean was busy last night, wasn't able to make it to pick up his award. Harrison Ford, I thought, had one of the best lines of the night. He got, I would consider, a well-deserved Lifetime Acting Award, and just for his skill and for his artistic ability. And he's aging, and we hope he stays healthy and strong. He was sounding a little bit weak, and definitely a little bit more feeble. He's in his 80s. He did say he was surprised he got the Lifetime Acting Award, since he figured he's about halfway into his career. So good line there from Harrison Ford. Opera is on the rise. The average age of tickets, and they get this from looking at ticket sales around the world, of opera ticket buyers has dropped from 57 to 44 years old. That means more and more younger people buying. And another sign of this, on Pinterest, where people go to order clothes, especially women, a 415% increase in a title called Outfits to Wear to the Opera. So very interesting to see that. And you see it among the pop stars, and they may get some of the credit for this. Rosalia, for instance, in her movie Lux, she used the London Symphony Orchestra as some of her background. Beyonce, with Cowboy Carter, also went and used Italian opera in the background. And hey, how about me? I'm not exactly an opera aficionado, but my wife and I went to the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, the VSO, last week, and there was Stephen Page. Yes, that same Stephen Page, Bare Naked Ladies, performing with his small group and with the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. Fantastic performance. So, hearing some of his classic songs was great. If I had $1 million, or if I had $1 million, yes, we'd all be rich. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Tune in tomorrow. Thank you.